Ladies and gentlemen, one nation, one poll may be closer than you think. In fact, it's possible if all goes well for the government and if it manages the numbers in parliament, then in 2019, in 2029, which is the next election, the general election, we will be voting for our parliament and state elections together. The cabinet, in a big step forward, has cleared the One Nation, One Election report, which was submitted to them by a panel that was headed by former President Ram Nath Kovind. Now, the Kovind panel has recommended One Nation, One poll to be implemented in 2 stages. First, for the Lok Sabha and the Assembly elections, and the second for local body elections within 100 days of the general election, which means the electoral roll remains the same. While the Bharatiya Janata Party and its allies are hailing it as the biggest poll reform ever, the opposition is seeing red. They say that the government is trying to impose the idea of one nation, one government on the citizens of this country, which is against the Indian Constitution. Do they have a point? Let's look back at the 2024 elections. The Bharatiya Janata Party emerged as the single largest party in the general elections. Of course, it didn't get a majority, but it did manage to form the government with the help of its allies. Now, question is, how did it do in the 4 states where assembly elections were held simultaneously? Very well. It won all 4, winning with its allies in Andhra Pradesh and Sikkim and sweeping Odisha and Arunachal Pradesh on its own. So when the opposition says that one nation, one election will only benefit the BJP or any ruling party, it may or may not have a point. We will debate that. But we do know in India that people vote differently in state elections and central elections. So if both state and central elections are voting together, does it somehow give a benefit to the ruling party at the center? That is a question that is worth debating. It's something we'll be talking about in just a bit. But here's the point, ladies and gentlemen. The government has a mammoth task at its hand. It has to create a consensus, and it also needs to amend a host of articles in the Constitution. In fact, the Kovind panel is saying that at least 18 articles in the Constitution will need to be amended for this. Now, somehow, if the BJP-led central government makes it happen, then India will become the 4th country, only the 4th country in the world to hold simultaneous elections after Sweden, Belgium, and South Africa. But remember, these are countries with a much lesser population than India. So our logistical challenge is much greater. Here's another point of trivia. Ladies and gentlemen, at least 67% of India simultaneously voted till 1967. Can the country do so again in 2029? That's the question. The opposition, as we said, is up in arms. Let's quickly listen in to who's saying what.
हम तो उसको नहीं मानते, ये नहीं चलने वाला है डेमोक्रेसी में। ये डेमोक्रेसी को टिकाना है तो जब जब चाहिए तब इलेक्शन करना पड़ेगा।
तो नरेंद्र मोदी का पूरा गेम प्लान यही है कि नेशनल पार्टीज रहें और दूसरे तमाम रीजनल पार्टीज, छोटे पार्टीज हमेशा के लिए खत्म हो जाएं। आप देखिए कि अगर नेशनल इलेक्शन होगा तो मुद्दा नेशनल होगा, रीजनल इलेक्शन होगा असेंबली का, विधानसभा का, तो रीजनल मुद्दा होगा। नरेंद्र मोदी ये चाहते हैं कि रीजनल मुद्दा कभी बने ही नहीं।
240 के मैंडेट के बाद लगा था कि माननीय मोदी जी अब रोजगारोन्मुख चीजों पर बात करेंगे, डाइग्रेशन और कुछ नहीं है। वन नेशन वन इलेक्शन जो एक विविधता रही है, क्या अब तक के जो मेनी इलेक्शंस हुए, क्या उसने डेमोक्रेसी को कमजोर किया? नहीं। कोई ऐसी स्टडी है? नहीं। वन नेशन वन इलेक्शन इस सरकार का पुनः एक ऐसा ऑब्सेशन है जिसकी जड़ें कहीं नहीं है, सिर्फ इसमें कि डाइग्रेशन हो, कुछ दिन हेडलाइन मैनेजमेंट हो, चर्चा हो, क्योंकि आपके पास इस तरह की कंटिजेंसीज के लिए क्या प्रावधान है, नोबडी नोस।
High level committee recommendations on one nation, one election, on simultaneous elections. That those recommendations have been accepted today by the Union Cabinet. And as you are aware, 1951 से 1967 तक इलेक्शन साइमल्टेनियसली होते थे. उसके बाद में 1999 में लॉ कमीशन ने अपनी 170th रिपोर्ट में रिकमेंड किया था कि वन इलेक्शन टू लोक सभा एंड ऑल लेजिस्लेटिव असेंबलीज इन 5 years होना चाहिए. देयर इज अ वाइड स्प्रेड सपोर्ट फॉर साइमल्टेनियस इलेक्शंस इन द कंट्री. देयर इज अ वाइड स्प्रेड सपोर्ट फॉर साइमल्टेनियस इलेक्शंस इन द कंट्री. इसीलिए एनडीए सरकार की कैबिनेट ने आज सर्वसम्मति से इस इन रिकमेंडेशंस को एक्सेप्ट किया.
As I said, one nation, one poll, many opinions. Everyone has an opinion on the subject because it impacts all of us. Charu Pragya is national spokesperson of the BJP, joining us on the broadcast. A.K. Vajpayee is an advocate, also a spokesperson of the LJP and ally of the BJP, supporting the idea. Sushmita Dev is a former Rajya Sabha MP and national spokesperson of the TMC. And Dr. Syed Hafiz is spokesperson of the DMK. Mathewm Antony is spokesperson of the Congress Party, and a bit from now will be joined by Dr. SY Quraishi, who is a former Chief Election Commissioner of India. We are going to be asking him whether it's a good idea or not. Thank you, everyone, for your time here on Mirror Now. Sushmita Dev, I'm going to start with you. Why is the TMC and 15 other opposition parties calling one nation, one poll a flop idea? Something that is not pragmatic, something that is just a jumla. How is it just a jumla when it was in the BJP's manifesto and the BJP is now moving to implement it?
I'll tell you, just like the Women's Reservation Act, which has been passed in Parliament, is going to stay in abeyance forever when there is no census and we don't know when the delimitation is going to happen. Similarly, this is yet another jumla of the Bharatiya Janata Party. You see, 100 days of this government has passed and we know all their failures, and this is just management of headlines so that all the media channels debate that instead of what has gone wrong with this government. See, first of all, when the Constitution was written, yes, we are one nation, we are united, but it never conceived a nation where there's just one government. There's going to be one central government and each state is going to have a separate government. Okay? And that's what in Norman parlance we call is federalism. Now, to give one small example, when the elections first started in this country after freedom, it all happened at the same time, right? But eventually, because of political developments, a tenure of a government can end earlier, whether it's a state government or whether it's the central government.
Correct.
So then, how do you make sure that there is always one nation, one election? It's impractical. In our country, we've seen central governments fall for whatever reason. We have seen state governments' tenures ending before time. So how are you then going to manage to have a same election or one election across the country? That's just to give one example. So I feel that, the BJP for the first time has created a precedent of a former president, being put to work the way he has been. But I'm sorry to say this entire concept is constitutionally wrong. It is totally against federalism. And it is a fact that people vote very differently in different elections, whether it's Panchayat, whether it's the assembly, whether it's the, Lok Sabha election. But to club it together is to undermine regional issues. It does, whether we like it or not. And they're trying to take it towards a presidential form of election, which is not what our constitution makers envisaged.
Okay, so essentially the crux of your argument, Sushmita Dev, is that when you approach an election as one nation, one election, one nation, one poll, you're essentially moving towards a presidential style of election, which is not something that our founding fathers had envisioned. But can I give you a flip side of the argument? The flip side of the argument is that oppositions in various states will be disincentivized to bring governments down because they know that they will not have a full 5 term after that. that they'll have shorter terms, that the term will only be till the next parliament election is going to be held. So that's a flip side of the argument as well. But would you want to come in here? I'll just get to everyone else in just a bit, but I'm quickly going to get in the BJP spokesperson here. Charu Pragya, that is a concern that has been raised. The concern that is being raised is that essentially one nation, one poll, even though it has been recommended by many committees and many bodies in the past, including the Election Commission in 1985, including the Law Commission in 1999, including the Niti Aayog in 2017, the fact is it has been recommended many, many times. It has never gone through because the opposition never agreed to it, right? The point that is being made by the opposition and 15 opposition parties today is essentially, if we cut out the rhetoric, is this is against India's federal structure. How do you respond to that?
So, thank you, Karen. It's great to be on air with you. I'm going to start by actually responding to every single negative point which is being raised by the Indian opposition. Needless to say, they find it amongst themselves enough reason to oppose everything, even if it is something of reason, only because it's been proposed by the Bharatiya Janata Party or the party in power. So that needs to change, and we saw that happening for the abrogation of Article 370, even abolition of triple talaq, so on and so forth. But coming to the point here, India's federal structure is not so weak, and the voters in India are very wise. And I will take examples and I will show to you. So you did a small comparison to show how the states fare when they go in for state elections along with the general elections, along with the Lok Sabha. We have seen that the electorate is so smart that they know whom to vote for at the state level and whom to vote for at the national level. Repeatedly, we have seen that kind of a result in the state of Odisha. Yes, this time BJP has formed the government in Odisha, but this was the first time ever. For decades, BJP has formed the government in Odisha, and the elections have happened along with the general elections, and it was never a BJP government. And the same example can be taken for Andhra Pradesh. Yes, we have an alliance with them today, but that's a new alliance. Before that, it was a regional party, comparatively smaller party, which has been in power in all these states, Sikkim included. So that is one argument which I would urge the opposition to not take. The electorate is very intelligent. Even in a state like Delhi, where I reside, people are very sure whom they want to vote for at the state level and at the national level. Another thing is, if you say today that this goes against the Constitution, well, the Constitution was written by very wise people. And when the Constitution was written, in fact, for as long as Nehruji was in power and he was alive, this is how the elections happened. Every 5 years, the whole country went in for elections. Till it was Indiraji's turn in the chair, and she misused Article 356 repeatedly to make sure the governments and states were falling, and that is how the time got desynchronized. That was not the case earlier. Today, I believe we spend billions, literally, on elections. There are personnel which go from one location to another, leaving their regular jobs. And this is not just paramilitary and police personnel. We are talking about teachers. We are talking about government employees. We are talking about emptying hallways in schools and colleges. It's a whole ecosystem which gives us policy paralysis for a very long time. What if we can do all of this together?
Dr. Syed Hafiz, why can't we do it together? Point is, you're saying the Constitution doesn't allow it. Amendments will be required. If it's a good idea, the Constitution will be amended. What's the big deal in that? Constitution has been amended in the past as well. If it is saving you money, if it is saving you time, if it is saving you energy, if it is ensuring that there is no policy paralysis, given the fact that India is always in election mode, if the idea is good on paper, why does the opposition not even want to consider it? Why have you thrown it into the dustbin without even actually reading what the Kovind panel is saying?
No, it is. See, the entire concept of this is unconstitutional, outrightly anti-Ambedkarite. Now, there is one proposal which says that you don't need to get the consent of a state government. What are you going to do? Either you are going to extend the tenure of existing state government, or you're going to cut short the tenure. Who gives them the power to extend or cut short the mandate given by the people for the duration? That itself is unconstitutional. You cannot compare what was happening till Indira Gandhi period. That was not the rule. that happened. Now you're creating a rule which is against the spirit of the constitution and federalism. What is going to happen there? What happens if the Lok Sabha election and the state elections happen simultaneously, and if Lok Sabha is divided and there is no majority? Are you going to have a re-election for the entire state government and the Lok Sabha election again? This is the biggest question. Now, why is that 100 days for Panchayat? Where is simultaneous elections? Are they not going to be in election mode for next 100 days? The entire India is going to be under mode of conduct for 100 days, despite state government being formed, despite new national government being formed. All these are silly things. You know, this reform is a very, very fancy word for the BJP. You bring demonetization that any logical person in the world will not accept. That is a reform according to BJP. You do anything unconstitutional, they will hide behind a banner of reform. Tell me how many reforms they have spoken about has given results on the ground? Nothing. It is just macho man effect, saying I am here to do something. That might be stupid, that might be silly, but I am going to do. I am not going to listen to the people. SY Quraishi, who is going to talk in the panel, he had written an article in the past. It's a very desirable thing to have one nation, one election. But it is not practical. Why? I'll tell you not practical. Even for a state election, you need paramilitary to move from one district to other district. We don't have enough forces, and you're going to conduct an election throughout India in one particular time. Where are the forces in the northeast? How are you going to do? Manipur is burning. One small state, we are not able to control violence, madam, for 1.5 years. The prime minister is yet to go. The chief minister is not ready to resign. Home minister is not ready to take onus on him. So that is the state of law and order situation in this country. And you are going to talk about one nation, one election.
But Dr. Saeed Hafiz, the fact is that Ashwini Vaishnav said that 80% people are on board with the idea. And the Ram Nath Kovind panel has taken opinions from many, many people. It's only 15 opposition parties who are opposing it.
I will tell you an example, madam. I will tell you an example in Tamil Nadu. No, I am telling you. No, I am telling you, madam. Yes, I am telling you. National education policy is outrightly rejected by at least 90% people of Tamil Nadu. That was an election campaign. BJP got only 4 MLAs who spoke about favor of NEPs, 0 MPs for the party who said NEP is good, 40 MPs for the party which said NEP is bad. You know, here is a governor in Tamil Nadu comes and says there is a massive support in Tamil Nadu for NEP. All these we have seen all these rhetorics and dramas and claims, madam. They will come and say even demonetization was supported. So all this does not work. In ground, you know, there are multiple angles to it, ma'am. There is a political angle to it. There is an administrative angle to it. There is an unconstitutional angle to it. I have spoken about unconstitutional
angle. We'll talk about that.
Oh, Quraishi sir will be coming. He will tell how administrative.
We'll talk about that. Will you give me 5 minutes? Okay, you're saying it's impractical. Dr. Hafiz, give me 5 minutes because the Prime Minister apparently today in the meeting has said the move is not political. We'll talk about that in just a bit. But ladies and gentlemen, if you could give me 5 to 6 minutes because I'm going to introduce Dr. SY Quraishi to the show. There are some questions that I have for him. I'll put those questions to him, get answers, and then come back to you. And of course, if Dr. Quraishi decides he wants to stay with our learned panel, he's most welcome to. Dr. SY Quraishi, the fact is that the government had made its intention very clear, so we should not be surprised that they have okayed the Ram Nath Kovind-led panel's report, suggesting that one nation, one poll is absolutely doable. I want to ask you, as a former Chief Election Commissioner, first of all, whether it is doable or not doable.
Well, Shreya, there are pros and cons of the proposal. Let me first give you the pros. Now, the voter is the same for all 3 tiers of election. The polling station is the same. The people who conduct the elections are the same, and the security apparatus is the same. Therefore, it makes a lot of sense that you go there, all 3 people, you go there and press 3 different machines. At the same time, you're done with it. That is the positive side. So for Election Commission, it's a easy thing to do, good thing to do. And we conduct elections once in 5 years and play golf for the next 5 years till the next election. So, but our convenience, Election Commission convenience is not the point. Now, what do people want? I remember Mr. Bhartrihari Mehtab in a meeting, public meeting, now he has changed party, but he said, okay, let us find out from the people, what do they want? He said they want frequent elections because the only importance which people in India have, the only power they have is the power of vote. How many times have we seen the MP and MLA missing for 5 years? People have to put posters, Gumshuda ki talash, missing, because 5 saal ke liye gayab ho gaye. Because of repeated election, at least they come and fold their hand. Then somebody mentioned about youth. I attended a youth conference in Pune, MIT Pune, where a girl from Chhattisgarh came out with a very interesting slogan कि जब जब चुनाव आता है गरीब के पेट में पुलाव आता है. Because गरीब के लिए election is a great opportunity. And one thing was that a lot of money is spent. The last estimate 2019 was 60,000 crores were spent. I think it's a good thing. 60,000 crores of politicians at least got recycled and went to the poor people, poor workers. This time the estimate is 1 lakh crores. Very good thing. So a repeated election actually is very pro-poor. So, and finally, the argument that it brings work to a standstill is fallacious, specious, and absolutely wrong. You just have to download the Model Code of Conduct. All it prohibits is an announcement of a new scheme. I have always said that for 4 years and 11 months you are in power, you don't think of those new schemes. All those bright new schemes come to your mind 2 weeks before the election to seduce the voters. Now, what is it? Do all the so nothing comes to a standstill. That's absolutely wrong. But if that is the case, 10 years the elections have been held. Why were they staggered so much? And Himachal and Gujarat have always, for the last 40 years, have been together simultaneous. They were staggered twice by 25 days, which means prolonged Model Code of Conduct, prolonged policy paralysis, prolonged stoppage of work. Now, what is this? This loses moral authority, and I haven't yet come to the COVID committee's recommendation. If you give me time, I'll analyze that. 2-3 points only there.
Okay, Dr. Quraishi, then here is a question I want to ask you, because this is based on data and experience. The opposition says that if you have state elections and parliament elections together, then there is a good chance that this will become a presidential style election where you're voting for the party that you want to see at the center, and it gives a natural advantage to whoever is at the center.
Yes.
Is that something you buy?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, because, when you're voting as a voter, suppose you're living in a village and there is a drain outside your house which is stinking. So, and you're going to vote for your sarpanch. Who will you have in your mind, and whose face will come to your into your eyes? Of the sarpanch candidate and not of the prime minister. You're not going to decide the Ukraine policy. You're going to decide who will handle your drain and Anganwadi and primary school. So why should local issues be submerged by the national issues? Local issues are equally important. Panchayat elections are equally important in the constitution. We have no right to subordinate them to the national election, and that is one flaw which I'm going to point out about this committee's report if you give me time.
Okay, can I just quickly bring in A.K. Vajpayee, sir? He's an advocate. He's also a spokesperson of the LJP. I want to ask him this point. Ask him about this point you are raising about accountability. Hanji, boliye.
I have to leave for another channel. So if you permit, I quit now, or I'll tell you about the COVID committee 3 recommendations. Tell me.
Go ahead, please.
Due apologies to Mr. Vajpayee. Now, COVID committee report says that when we talk of simultaneous election, we are only talking of Lok Sabha and Vidhan Sabha. And parliamentary Panchayat Raj is different. Now, 4,000 MLAs and 543 MPs make 5,000. 5,000 people do not make a simultaneous election. 30 lakh elected representatives you have thrown out from this simultaneous election. Now, second very amusing proposal that the Panchayat election will be held after 100 days. After 100 days is not simultaneous election. It is a totally new election with totally new bandobast, entire bandobast repeated within 3 months, even before you've got over the fatigue of the election. And finally, to say that it says that if the state assembly falls prematurely, the election will be held. That is also not simultaneous election, but it will be held only for the remainder of the period. There also there is a flaw. You are spending crores of rupees for a 2-year election, not for 5-year election. May I leave now?
Okay, fair points. I think you're making fair points. Yeah, you can, and thank you very much for your time. Essentially, what Mr. Quraishi is not saying, he's given us reasons why one nation, one election will not work. What essentially he has not said is that he opposes it. He doesn't think it's a good idea. A.K. Vajpayee, the reason that he thinks it's not a good idea, and there are lots of people like him as well, is that if you have elections regularly in this country, it keeps politicians, नेताज accountable. नहीं तो 5 साल झेलना पड़ेगा उन लोगों को. एटलीस्ट डर तो रहेगा कि अगले 3 साल में दोबारा इलेक्शन आने वाला है. काम कर लेते हैं, दिख जाते हैं जनता को.
No, if you remember, there was a debate earlier about recalling the candidate. We have debated on that point of time at a very large scale. That is a separate issue. The point is whether it is in the interest of the nation or not. The answer will definitely come. There are so many factors which clearly indicates if the one nation, one election is carried out. And what for the expert committee was? Expert committee has examined every point, every pros and cons. They consulted with the stakeholders, political parties, armed public, and everybody they have considered, and thereafter they decided and they have given a report which has been properly examined by the cabinet also, and they finally approved it. And in the cabinet, mind you, all political parties who are part and partial of the NDA government, the cabinet ministers were there. So it means they all are supporting them. Some people are talking about TDP. Now TDP has given a statement that they are also supporting. JDU is also supporting. We are also supporting. My simple point is,
sir, but there are 15 opposition parties that are not supporting, na?
Simultaneous election means that they will oppose. They were opposing. I remember Ramvilas Paswan, our leader, was their minister, and he introduced with the consent of the Mr. Modi, one nation, one ration card. What happened to that? It is being implemented properly. What happened to GST? I say there should be a vision, number one. There should be strong willpower, number two, and then the difficulties will come out. Like in this also, you have to amend the major articles like 83, 172, 174, 356 of the Constitution. Unless those articles added, modified or amended, it cannot be done. So ultimately the matter is going to be debated in the parliament, and the parliament will pass these amendments, then only it can be carried out. But the point of importance is that a good idea for the developing country like us, when we have fixed our target that we will become the third largest economy, if we will not proceed like this, if we will not reform our country like this, then what will happen? So we must appreciate, and opposition parties must
Mathewm
play
Antony,
constructive role. They should not oppose for the purpose of opposing only.
Please do remember. Mathewm Antony, respond to that. Essentially, what the BJP and its allies are saying, opposition ka kaam hi hai. They oppose just for the sake of opposing. Even if it's a good idea, because it is coming from the BJP, they are opposing it. That is the only reason why they are doing it.
Shreya, my question to you is, then why did we have phased Lok Sabha elections in states if you were so confident about this idea? Where was the political intent and motive of BJP of doing the Lok Sabha elections last time in a single phase? Why did we have so many phases? Why are we having so many phases in the state elections right now? If they're so confident about this concept of one nation, one election, why do we have this spread right now? We could have tried it. Now, this is a non-starter because as per the federal structure, it needs a parliament node, it needs a state consent. And it needs a 10% state consent.
Correct.
Do you think that this government is going to get a 10% state consent? And there is also, this is not something without a thinking from the BJP. The BJP thinking originates from the idea of an IDFC report in 2015 stating that 77% of the voters will vote for the same party if it is held simultaneously for the state assembly and the Lok Sabha, whereas, it will vote differently. 61% will vote differently if it is held differently. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to consolidate, whereas we forget the fact that the nation is fought in a national agenda, the state is fought in a state agenda, the regional, the panchayat and the municipal elections are fought in a different agenda. And the kind of popularity and the kind of way in which the people vote. In the national election, the people vote for the national parties or the regional parties. In the state election, they will vote for the regional parties and the national parties. In the municipality elections, they will vote for individuals along with the parties, but largely concerning with that one. So that's a weightage which they put in. Where is this concept from? And the last thing to comment on the BJP is on the idea of GST. They can't even control one state, where we have two sections which is fighting for 1.5 years. The Prime Minister can't even go that side, can't even control that one, and they're saying that they can control one nation, one election. Do you need to smile, or do you need to laugh, or do you need to put a sarcasm to it? Where is the efficiency of the BJP? GST one entrepreneur made a very, very polite presentation to the finance minister. The finance minister humiliated the entire state, the entire MSME entrepreneurship community. And this is what we are going to do about it? Do we need to cry about the BJP government's
Mathewm Antony,
such blind policies?
No. So the point is that you are digressing. The debate is about one nation, one poll. As I said, one nation, one poll, multiple opinions, and opinions is what I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. The viewers have understood what you're saying.
Smaller things. How can they handle this kind of things? It's consensus building. Where is the effort of this government to build consensus or even discuss this amongst the other parties rather than announcing it simultaneously, just like that? Sorry. Because I leave it till last to kind of make a comment.
The fact is the way things are structured, guys, the fact is that the way things are structured right now, it will, as you said, require, if one nation, one poll has to come through, then not maybe for the elections for parliament and state assemblies, that will have to be cleared by parliament. Maybe somehow the BJP pushes through with that, BJP plus allies. But for municipal elections, for Panchayati Raj elections, you will need to have the consent of states. It will have to be ratified by at least 50% of the states. So this is an uphill task, and what will be required is consensus. The more important question to ask at this point of time is whether the BJP will be in a position to build a consensus to push its quote-unquote electoral reform through. I needed all your views today. Thank you very much, Charu Pragya, for joining us this evening. A.K. Vajpayee, thank you very much. Sushmita Dev, thank you very much. Dr. Syed Hafiz, thank you very much. Mathewm Antony, good to have you on the show. And of course, Dr. Quraishi, thank you very much as well. Ladies and gentlemen, on that note, I'm